organizations, they present themselves to be like these progressive, supportive, culture driven and focused organizations. But
Yeah,
a lot of that's political, right?
for sure.
It's to be politically correct because you can't get on your website and say, "Hey, we don't really treat our employees the best," right? Like you're trying to you're trying to attract
Right.
folks to your
Right. Right.
company
Right.
and build
Right.
value in it.
Right.
But then to the point about microaggressions, I think that's the key too. Is that many microaggressions happen on a subconscious level.
Right.
So many managers or employees, whoever, who are practicing microaggressions are often not even aware that what they're doing or saying is a microaggression.
Right.
And that's also what makes microaggressions or any form of discrimination insidious as well, is because people are unaware that they're even doing this.
Yeah.
So what is the preventative measure that you take? Because I've seen, as you said earlier, right, these, these workplace trainings. I've seen folks sit down and do these trainings.
And nothing changes.
And then the next day they're still
doing the same.
So it's not that you can't hold people accountable or that behaviors can't be changed.
Yeah.
But people have to be willing to do the internal work to change their behaviors. Because we could have a million trainings. You can train them every day.
Yeah.
But if they're not invested, if there's no engagement,
you're
gonna get the same results.
There's a couple of things here. So one, I play a role in this in the sense that because I've dealt with this so much, I just internalize it and I don't even have the conversation with my manager about it because I'm just like,
that's real.
Me having a conversation with you is either going to lead to one, me getting attacked even more.
Right.
Like even me having this episode right now is a potential that somebody at work can may potentially see it, may lead to unnecessary stress for me. Right. So I'm very well aware of that fact, which is why I don't open up and talk about it. That's one. Two, me opening up and talking about it, I have to really and truly trust that if I open up and talk about it, that something is going to happen.
Right.
And in the back of my head, with what I've experienced and what I know about people in these systems, I don't necessarily think something is going to really change because I feel like there is, especially when it comes to, and I'm not going to say I hate to bring race into it because I don't hate to bring race into it. Race is in everything. Like I hate when people say, "Oh, why you bring race?" Race is in literally in everything. It's in everything, right? So, especially as a black man, I told my manager this one time, right? I was like, "Yo, when I got that specific feedback, like, hey, you're asking questions, but people don't know if you've done work behind like the questions." I was like, "There's an assumption of negligence.
Right.
There is an assumption of negligence.
Right.
They're assuming that I'm negligent at my job. I'm not doing my job. Because if you're assuming that I'm asking you a question and that I haven't done the work behind it before I came to the point of asking you a question, you're assuming I'm not doing my job. You're assuming I'm just literally sitting here, information comes my way, and I'm like, let me just ask this guy.
Yeah.
You're assuming I did nothing up until that point, to the point where you're literally saying that my response shouldn't just be a question, it should be justification of what I've done.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? So I explained that to him. I'm like, yo, there's assumption of negligence. I don't know if he necessarily got it in that moment or understood where I was coming from. But for me, like that was one of the most heated moments I've ever had in my life in a workplace like environment.
Right.
Where I literally was hot, bro. And I had to I knew he knew I was mad.
Yeah.
But I still had to contain it because I didn't want to come off as super unprofessional and irate because then that feeds into it even more. If you're getting feedback, and because you're getting this feedback, you can't even take feedback. But it's not the fact that I can't take feedback. It's the type of feedback that I'm being given. If you're telling me, hey, this client came to us and they told us this and this was going on and you didn't explain something properly, cool, I understand.
Right.
I'll do better. But if you're coming to me with something like, yo, you're asking questions and you're not giving your reasoning behind the question, you're giving me more work for something that if we're all on the same team, I shouldn't necessarily have to deal with that. Does that person have to come and justify to me what they've done before they ask me a question, or do they ask me a question and I just give them what they need?
Right.
You get what I'm saying? So that when you start looking at it from that lens, does everybody experience this? And this is this a company-wide thing?
Right.
Or are we only telling this person to do this? Or are we only expecting this from this person? Or are we assuming this of this person because of who they are? I think that is how we answer your question of how do we get it to change within the company culture. People have to be willing to really stop and think okay, is this feedback and process improvement or process change specifically just for one person? Or is this a system-wide process that we're implementing? Do we want everybody, every time they ask a question, to say, hey, this is what I've done before I got to this question? Or do we want people to just feel comfortable asking questions?